your mean time to WTF for a security alert is more than a minute, it's time to look at Lacework. Lacework will help you get your security act together for everything from compliant service configurations to container app relationships, all without the need for PhDs in AWS to write the rules. If you're building a secure business on AWS with compliance requirements, you don't really have time to choose between antivirus or firewall companies to help you secure your stack. That's why Lacework is built from the ground up for the cloud. Low effort, high visibility, and detection. To learn more, visit lacework.com. I've long been known to complain about how many services AWS has. At last check, there were north of 200 of them. Because it amuses me, I even play a game with AWS employees, asking them to pick the fake service out of a list of 5 services. Combined with AWS's legendary refusal to deprecate anything a customer's depending upon, and their historical penchant for the acceleration of releases over time, it's a natural conclusion to predict a future in which there are thousands of AWS services. While some people have interpreted this observation as AWS should slow down or stop releasing services, that's never been the position that I've held. To the extent that I've been misunderstood as believing in such a silly idea, it's my fault for not being clearer in what I believe the real problem is. In fact, it's fairly apparent that AWS leadership dreams of a future in which every problem a technology worker can have can be addressed by using one of their oh-so-very many services. There's nothing wrong with that perspective, barring antitrust concerns, but it hides the larger problem that exists today. The problem isn't AWS's service variety, the number of them, or how quickly they're releasing new ones. Rather, it's with how those services are talked about to customers. Many of AWS's customers have the haunting fear that there already is an AWS service that does the thing they need done, but due to the sheer volume of services, there's no way to find that service. The services listing on AWS's site reads like a practical joke. Inside, the AWS Management Console is even worse, with a listing of services seemingly arbitrary and more than a little capricious. For example, one column is topped by Bracket, their quantum computing service that basically nobody needs today. Meanwhile, their managed Kubernetes service is at the bottom of the third column. They're apparently laid out in some kind of order that aligns with AWS's internal organizational structure, or perhaps sorted by how much AWS wants to promote growth in certain areas. This is wrong. Instead, as AWS grows their service count beyond any one person's capacity to reason about them, the alignment needs to change from listing off a bunch of services by AWS organization or area of discipline, and instead shift to describing the various offerings in the context of the problems customers have and want to solve. No customer cares about AWS inherently. They care about what AWS allows them to do. If we look at various questions on Twitter, forums, etc., the questions that users ask increasingly align less with how do I do X with a given service, and more with which service should I use to solve this problem. When well-intentioned users ask, what service should I use to host a website? They're basically trampled with answers such as S3, Lightsail, Elastic Beanstalk, EC2, and Fargate, none of which are wrong. The trouble is, the user now feels that whatever they select is wrong, because otherwise 75% of the respondents wouldn't be vehemently disagreeing with their selection. This is a major failure on AWS marketing's part, and it stems from a lack of storytelling. This episode is sponsored by ExtraHop. ExtraHop provides threat detection and response for the enterprise, not the starship. On-prem security doesn't translate well to cloud or multi-cloud environments, and that's not even counting IoT. ExtraHop automatically discovers everything inside the perimeter, including your cloud workloads and IoT devices, detects these threats up to 35% faster, and helps you act immediately. Ask for a free trial of detection and response for AWS today at extrahop.com/trial. Ultimately, AWS marketing will need to shift their messaging from service with a dumb name lets you provision print servers in specific suburbs of Milwaukee to asking the user what they're trying to do and then surfacing relevant options. This is going to be a challenge for 2 reasons. Because AWS marketing has historically been aligned around promoting specific services to everyone, and second, because so many services can be applied to so many different kinds of problems. To the first point, AWS's marketing doesn't really do holistic stories. My impression is that different teams have different marketing functions, whereas central or global marketing, as it's known inside AWS, is the group responsible for things like buying airport ads and naming stadiums. Contrast this structure to every customer architecture in existence. They use a wide-ranging selection of AWS services to put together the things they're demonstrating. This would require an unprecedented collaboration between teams that often have no idea that the others even exist. AWS's organizational structure just isn't set up for this sort of thing. As to the second, I use Route 53 as a database, code deploy as my run this container on a scheduled basis, and Lambda functions for all kinds of different things. Understanding these uses of those services requires a nuanced understanding of exactly what it is that I'm building. And AWS has been very upfront about how much they learn about their own offerings from what customers build with them. AWS is going to need a lot more knowledge about customer use cases than is realistic to expect from them. We're left with the clear fact that these challenges are the future of AWS marketing, with a marketing organization that shows every sign of being unprepared to deliver on that future. I periodically joke that I'm the head of AWS marketing, but only because it seems like no one else is doing the job. AWS is going to need people who can demonstrate an extremely unorthodox approach to cloud services storytelling. Instead, it seems they've chosen to bias instead for marketing via sending out multiple copies of the same email to existing customers.
This has been a Humble Pod production. Stay humble.